Welcome to Ageless. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. This is a podcast for women, about women, featuring women. It's about what happens when we turn 50 and our culture quietly deems us irrelevant. But we are not our mothers. There's a new generation of 50-plus women who are redefining what it means to thrive in the second half of our lives. Whether you're still raising children, working, caring for aging parents, or just looking for the next chapter, I strongly believe that my guests will inspire you because they inspire me. On today's show, my guest is Aletia Ferreira. She was born in South Africa and developed a passion for dance at a young age. That passion led her to Los Angeles in her 20s. Throughout her career, she has taught more than 8,000 classes to children ages 2 through 12. She also started a costume and recital business, which she built for 20 years. And now she's involved with preschool children again. She created a program involving holistic movement and dance. It's called Kike Method. We're going to dive into that in a moment. But first, Aletia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Amanda.
So one of the best parts of doing this show is learning about the really unique backgrounds of all my guests. And one of the things that caught me right off the bat from your bio and now from speaking to you from your accent is growing up in South Africa. So what was that like and how did you end up here in the U.S.?
You know, I think growing up in South Africa, looking back and having raised my children here in the United States, it was a very unique experience. We didn't have television. Television didn't come to South Africa until 1975. So as a young child, there was no television. We played outside all the time. Climbing trees was one of my favorite things to do. We played in dirt, and it was a great dirty life. But we had pretty much the same kind of life as people in the US have, just with less. And it was quite wonderful. I didn't learn English until I was 7. So I had a little friend who was my neighbor. And so we played together a lot, and she would speak English and I would speak Afrikaans, and we had to try and figure out our way around each other. And it was a great experience.
So what age did you eventually come to the U.S.?
I was 21 when I left South Africa.
Wow. And I know you started dance at a really young age. How did that happen? Did your mom get you involved?
I watched a John Travolta movie, and I can't remember which one it was.
It's
one of the
got to be, yes, Saturday Night Fever.
I think it was. And we found this little dance studio in a strip mall, and I said to the woman who was the teacher, her name was Wendy, and I said to her, well, I want to learn disco. And she said, I am not teaching you disco. And she said, but I want you to come and dance with me. So I danced with her, and we did modern and tap and all the other forms of dance, and we became very good friends. And 40 years later, I am still friends with her, and just recently saw her, and she's still teaching.
Wow. So this love of dance, specifically of disco, which I also grew up in the 70s, so I have quite a fondness for that. It led you to say, I want to do more of that, and I want to do it in the U.S., and that's why you ended up coming right to the United States, to Los Angeles.
So I had my dance training in the city that I grew up in, which was Port Elizabeth, and then I went to university. And I studied theater. And so I got a degree in theater and knew that I wanted to do something with acting. So I basically packed my bags and got on a plane and left for Los Angeles.
That's a pretty big deal coming from South Africa. What was that experience like when you got to Los Angeles? I mean, it had to be a culture shock.
It was. I mean, this was 1992, no cell phones. There was barely internet. I didn't have any internet. As I was flying to Los Angeles, the LA riots broke out with Rodney King. And so we ended up not being able to fly into Los Angeles. And so I got rerouted and got stuck in Seattle for a couple days. But I figured out my way to get back in LA. And I ended up having to be a nanny for a while there. And that is how I had a place to live and could figure out my next move.
So when did you eventually turn your attention to teaching? I mean, it sounds like you had, dreams of acting and dancing professionally. How did that morph from that career into teaching dance?
So I had to, I think after being a nanny, yes, I needed to figure out a way to get a green card and get a work permit. And so that's how I did that, was to be able to teach dance to young children. And while I was doing that, I was also doing acting and just didn't like it. It was really not for me. I didn't like the culture. And I really loved working with children. And I was able to get my green card that way. And through teaching dance with these young kids, I started my costume business.
And so this was a recital and costume business for kids that were competing in dance events or doing recitals through these dance schools where you were working.
Correct. So the way that whole thing started was that after 4 years of being in the United States, I finally was able to leave and go back to see my family for the first time. And of course, being a dance teacher, I had no money. So I needed to figure out a way how to make some extra cash and get that international ticket. So that's how the whole costume business started. And then when I came back, I just continued working on it, and we ended up being a worldwide company with just over 1.2 million in revenue, and we did that for 20 years.
Wow. And then eventually, how did you get to Raleigh, North Carolina?
Well, for my first marriage was in Los Angeles, and we had our children there. And we moved to Raleigh, and I ran the business from Raleigh for a little while. And then we ended up moving the factory to Honduras, and just really loved living in Raleigh. But I eventually sold the brand of the company. And after about 20 years, was done with the costume industry.
So now, fast forward, you've developed this method, and I'm going to pronounce it and tell me if I'm saying it correctly, the Kike method?
It is called the Kike method.
Okay, great. And tell me, what is it? How does it work?
The Kike method started after I sold the brand, the costume brand, and I really needed something to do that was not only useful, but that I felt that I could connect with people. And I knew that I loved working with children, and I know that I can work with kids. And so I built this team of experts who basically oversaw the curriculum for us. And so we have a friend of mine who has master's degree in early childhood education, and we've got an Olympic runner that is on board and a mindfulness coach. And so this program was built basically for dance studios, because dance was my background, so that they could run a preschool in their open space in the morning. And it has evolved into something a little bit bigger than that. So we currently have 2 locations, one in Raleigh and one in Cary, and we also license other studios in other states to be able to run this program. But this program not only teaches preschool to young children and all of their preschool skills to get them ready for kindergarten, but we really teach them self-regulation, connection, and communication. And so we take what a child needs, not only in their academic skills, but also in their social skills, to be able to give them a leg up in getting ready to be part of public school. And we work with the parents as well to be able to navigate the difficulty in raising children.
And how do you use dance and movement to teach these skills to kids?
The unique thing about our program is that we teach it in open dance studio spaces. So there are no desks or tables. And all of the learning that happens is always connected to a movement skill. So we will teach a dance move across the floor and immediately connect it to a preschool skill.
That is really, so give me an example of that. That's really interesting.
So if the country that we're visiting, for instance, this week is Brazil, then the animal that we're going to talk about is an anaconda. If that's the first week and we're talking about the letter A, then we will slither by doing step slide across the floor with a story that we tell the kids. And when they get to the other side, we will then task them with an age-appropriate preschool skill like a writing skill or practicing how to make that A or recognizing the A depending on their level.
So really just kind of making learning very tangible by showing them all sorts of different ways that you could talk about or represent this particular skill in this particular animal or this particular culture.
That's right. We really try to make it fun for kids so they are excited about coming to school and learning, and they don't really know that they're learning anything. We make sure that when they walk through that door, they are the most important person that is arriving that day, and they feel it, and they walk through the door with a smile on their face, and they leave with smiles on their faces.
I mean, they're having fun, obviously.
Yes.
So, Aletia, the cornerstone of this show is women reinventing themselves after the age of 50, and clearly you have done this several times over. I mean, it sounds like you're just as busy now as you were when you were younger. What do you think the key is to not only finding these new chapters in life, but believing in yourself enough that you can make these new chapters happen?
I think that it's really important in life to practice to know what it is that you want. I think trying new things and not being scared and speaking your truth to delve into finding the thing that speaks to you is really important.
And I think as well, maybe taking risks, because a lot of us get to a point, I think a lot of women feel stuck in midlife. They find themselves in a place where, maybe other people don't see them as relevant as they once were. I've heard women complain of feeling invisible. And, it's a risk to step out of your comfort zone and do something new.
I agree with that. And I always say to my own children, you just have to pick your hard. Everything is hard in life. So you could either sit now and stay comfortable, and then it's hard for you because you're not where you want to be, or you can do the hard thing and take the risk.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes an incredible amount of sense. So what's next for you? I mean, obviously, you keep reinventing yourself. I mean, it sounds like you're putting a lot of energy into this, the KK method right now. Are there other things you still want to do?
I think the list of things is consistently expanding of what I find interesting. And the older I get, the more things I'm interested in. So that's really... That is new for me. When I was very stressed raising my children, I didn't have that feeling of freedom, and now I really do. We're starting a YouTube channel for the KK method as well, and so we already have people from all over the world that now has access to some of our free information for preschool. And really for me, I love people. I love connecting with people, and so enjoying and experiencing other cultures is huge on my list.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, what would your advice be to other women who might be, sitting here listening to this right now in the same age range that we are, in their 50s, and just trying to figure out next steps?
I think the small thing is to start. You have to find one thing that you really love. And sometimes for a lot of women, because we do so much constantly for other people, we don't put ourselves on the list. And I think you have to start putting yourself on the list.
That's some great advice. Well, I really appreciate your sharing your journey with us today. And I look forward to seeing where you go with it. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks so much for joining us today. This show has been a production of Stage Might Communications. It is researched, written, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Amanda Lamb. The music for this show was composed and played by Reginald Griffin. The opinions of my guests are their own. If you have any ideas for the show, please reach out to me on Facebook at Stage Might. Thanks for listening.